Hi everyone, thanks so much for joining me this afternoon for our webinar on strategic marketing on a shoestring budget. My name's Kristy Bailey. I own and operate a marketing business, so a lot of what we go through today is going to be based on what I do on a daily basis, aside from being an advisor through Business Station as part of the ASBAS program. So today's session is designed to be interactive, and I'd really encourage you to use the Q&A functionality to ask questions at any time. Keep in mind, I'll stay on for a few minutes at the end of the session to allow for questions as well, but it'll be great if you have any questions, just type them in as you go and I'll keep an eye on that and answer them as quickly as I can. So you may be at varying levels of your marketing sort of careers or levels of involvement in terms of marketing within your business. So today we're going to go through some basic sort of strategic marketing elements. We'll identify the components in a marketing strategy and a marketing plan, and look at how a strategy can in fact have huge financial benefits for your business. So we'll then also look at a range of low-cost marketing tactics that you might be able to implement within your own business as well. We're also going to look at the importance of measuring and controlling your marketing to ensure that you're producing sales and spending your funds the most effective way. So a few different elements to go through. Now, we'll start with the strategic side of things because I truly believe that that does have the biggest financial benefits. And then towards the end, we'll look at some of those individual tactics that are low cost. All right, first, before we get stuck into it, to define marketing, well, marketing really is anticipating the needs and wants of targeted customers and managing the process through which these needs and wants are satisfied. But in doing so, you really have to do that profitably. The key word here is targeted. You have to know exactly who you're selling to so that you can know their specific needs and wants. And therefore, you'll be able to provide them exactly what they want, and you'll provide it where and how they want it. So one of the key elements of today's webinar is looking at the theory that successful marketing doesn't have to cost your small business significantly, but you absolutely need to know the results of what you're doing so that you can ensure you're spending your money in the right areas. And that's where the profitability comes into it. And where strategic planning comes into it. So a lot of small businesses create a business plan, perhaps when you start up your business, or you may have had to create one at some stage for a bank or something along those lines. But with the day-to-day running of your business, a lot of time tends to go by before you refer back to that plan, if you refer back to it at all. And as you know, running a small business, a lot can happen in the business during a period of time. Your priorities might shift, new products might be introduced, key staff may come and go. So there really are a range of different things that could impact your overall business plan. So the best way to make sure that you're marketing effectively and reaching your goals is to go through that important process of annual planning. Each year, take the time to measure your progress and identify things that you've achieved in the previous year and assess specific steps that you might take in the coming year to make sure that you stay on track. So that will then tie in with your marketing strategy and being able to market in a cost-effective way. So in terms of defining the strategic planning elements of your business, have a look at the pyramid that you see on the screen. So the marketing strategy has to align with your overall business plan or your business goals. So that then, your business goals tie into your marketing strategy. Your marketing strategy then defines your marketing mix, which is essentially your price, your product, your promotion, and your place or your distribution. And then the marketing plan is simply the implementation of it all. So allocating your marketing resources, implementation of your actual marketing activities, and budgeting, of course. So what is a marketing strategy, which is that component that we're sort of focusing on? Well, that's a selection of a course of action that involves really specific customer groups. It also involves communication methods, distribution channels, and your pricing structures. So it's a combination of your target markets and marketing mixes. So a huge advantage to a strategic marketing plan is that it really allows you to find and then use what works for you and stay focused on that path. So for a lot of small businesses, developing a marketing strategy can seem like either a big task to take on yourself or an expensive task if you outsource it. And then once you do get a marketing strategy from an outsourced company, you might find that a lot of the advice that you're given is that you need to invest a significant amount of budget into achieving the outcomes of that strategy. But I personally think that there's a lot of things that you can do yourself and it doesn't have to be expensive. And that's what we're going to essentially identify today. Before we do, looking at the strategic planning process. Now, developing a strategic marketing plan is an extensive process. For me, it takes a number of weeks to obtain information, and then you analyze that information. You go back and forth, and then ultimately you develop a strategy around everything that you've learned. So there are some key research areas or key strategic research areas. Now, what I've got on the screen there is the basis of those areas that you will incorporate in your marketing strategy. Some of them are fairly straightforward, others will go into a bit more detail on. But the ones that are straightforward, first of all, your SWOT. Now, a SWOT analysis is marketing 101. You may have heard of the term before, but basically it's an analysis of your strengths and your weaknesses, which are internal to your company, and then any opportunities and threats that are external to your company. The way I tend to do a SWOT is to just look at prepare a table with those 4 boxes in it and fill it out. Now, I would really encourage that you give that document, a really simple SWOT document, to as many staff members within your business as possible, and get their feedback. It's really interesting to see what internal people within your organization will determine as your company's strengths and weaknesses. And then also opportunities and threats. They may not have any other forum to communicate this with you. And it doesn't matter their role. They could be front of house, back of house. I've done this with resorts before, and we've had the head housekeeping plus the head chefs, as well as your head of reception. So those kind of people get involved in the process, and all the information that they give you will have a different perspective on it. So definitely I'd encourage you, as part of this strategic planning process, to encourage as many people as possible to be involved. So that's a SWOT. So strengths and weaknesses are internal, opportunities and threats are external factors that have the ability to affect your business. The next analysis I would look at doing is a PEST or a PESTLE. Now, a PEST is an acronym for political, economic, social, and technological. And that's the basic analysis. Again, table sort of format where you fill in and brainstorm those areas. Now, you can expand on that by incorporating environmental and legal factors, which are very relevant in a number of businesses. So you could have 4 or 6 boxes there that you're completing. Now, with a PEST or a PESTLE analysis, a lot of the elements that you will add into this table are relevant to your business in that they can impact or have the ability to impact your business, but you may not be able to do anything about them. For example, there could be political factors, there could be a change of government, and you know that that has the potential to have an impact on your business. However, there's nothing you can do about it. It's just knowing that there is a potential thing there that could impact it positively or negatively. So some of the information that you'll be adding into your SWOT may also be relevant in your PEST or PESTLE analysis, and vice versa. So this information can be repeated in multiple areas. It's just really an information gathering exercise to just obtain as much info as you can so that you can see the big picture surrounding your business. A competitor analysis is the next sort of research area that you'll need to incorporate. Now, that's very straightforward in terms of just analysing your competitors, everything that you know about them, including their strengths, their weaknesses, and their value to customers. So what is it that they're pitching to customers? Now, you could have direct or indirect competitors. You could have a business that sits, almost identical to yours, offering the same products and services to the same market. Or you could have someone where, we see this all the time, where customers aren't going to do both. So they're not going to be able to purchase both of these items. So you are competing with a product that's not the same product, but you're competing for that customer dollar, essentially. So think about that as well, and analyze who your direct and indirect competitors are. Then I would incorporate a sales analysis. So really having a look at your own sales results and identifying what products have done well, what seasonality does well in terms of months of the year or, periods of time within the year, so that you can see where you can identify areas for growth, essentially. Now, Amongst all that, you should be able to define your unique selling proposition. So what is it that you are pitching to clients? What is your unique point of difference? Now, a lot of the times when you're looking at your competitors and you're looking at your strengths, you'll be able to identify an area where you're different to your competitors, but where you're very strong and where you will appeal to customers. So I would normally do that once you've obtained all of the other information. Then you'll need to look at defining your target market. Now, target markets, I'm going to explain more on the importance of that shortly and go into depth about target markets. But this is really the key to marketing on a shoestring budget, identifying exactly who it is that you want to come through your doors or to purchase your product or service. Once you know exactly who they are, you know exactly where they consume media, which is exactly where you place your advertising. So you're very targeted with your advertising spend. And now defining your marketing mix, your 4 Ps, your product, price, place, and promotion. I'm going to expand on that as well shortly. So they're sort of the 2 areas from a strategic marketing perspective that I'll go into more depth on now. But before I do, financial analysis and budgeting is a key part of your strategic marketing plan. Now, think about, how do you budget for marketing? Do you know what your budget has actually been in the past? Do you know how much you've allocated or how much you've even spent? Some people don't have a budget. They just spend as and when is needed. And when I ask them, what have you spent on marketing in the last 12 months? They actually don't know what that is. So think about that. And if you don't already know, get those reports from your accounting software so that you can determine how much you've spent. Now, normally a marketing budget should be between 4 and 10% of the revenue, your gross revenue of the business. Now, it's said that 4% will maintain your marketing position, whereas 10% will grow that position. But in saying that, in small businesses, I find this varies a lot. So it might be that you're spending, every year you've only ever spent $20,000 on marketing, whereas 10% of your revenue might be a lot more than that, but it's not really realistic to increase it beyond what you've spent in the past. So I would recommend you look at it from a reverse perspective and go, okay, if we've spent on average, let's say $20,000 every year, then this year, let's look at it as if we only had $20,000, how would we best spend it? And that way you're making sure that you can survive. That long-term growth and the sustainability of your business is really important. You don't want to overspend at that point, but as you start seeing results by being more strategic, you will hopefully be able to increase that marketing budget. In terms of your financial analysis, of course, you have to determine expenses associated with the production of perhaps collateral, design, web design, that kind of thing, and obviously your marketing. You'll have to determine anticipated cash flows. Now, if you don't already have a cash flow forecast, that's an absolutely crucial part of strategic marketing and planning, because you need to know when you can actually spend the money. So we do an entire webinar on cash flow. If you haven't been involved in that in the past, I'm quite passionate about cash flow because it's so important to understand when you actually have money within the business so that you can take advantage of that by spending on things like marketing. And not committing to marketing at times where you don't have the money to. You also have to look at what the critical assumptions are of this financial analysis. So if you're going to spend X, you're going to get Y, and what the impacts may be of changes in those assumptions. So some of those things are obviously crucial to financial analysis of a business in general, but really important to the marketing side of things and strategic marketing as well. Now, with these strategy areas, a lot are very straightforward and obvious. So I'm going to leave you to go through and work on those in your own time. We could literally have a full day session on marketing strategy and the development of a strategy. But we're just going to go into a couple of those areas where I think they require a little bit more explanation. So I'll expand on those now. And we'll start with target markets. Like I said, I'm very passionate about target markets, and I think this is really the basis of an effective marketing strategy and effectively spending your money as well. Now, I think you really need to know your target market. A target market is a market segment that's been selected by your business for marketing attention. So it doesn't have to be who's come through your doors in the past. This is who you're selecting for your marketing attention. So through research of who your target market is, or who they could be, you might find that there's some target segments that no one's reaching or no one's communicating to. On the flip side, there could be target markets that are being served by competitors, but they're not very well. So there could be an opportunity there. Or there may be other target markets that are saturated with options. So there could be a lot more difficult and more costly to get to. Now, to be a viable market segment, there's generally 4 criteria that you'll have to meet, or that segment will have to meet. The first is that the individuals or the businesses within that segment should be homogenous. Now, that means that they should all be alike. The second, and they're alike within their own criteria. The second is that the market segment has to differ from the general population. So it can't just be males or females, or you have to really define who they are, and they have to be different to other market segments. The third is that the segment has to be large enough to be financially viable to support its own marketing campaign. So some target or some market segments might meet the first criteria, but they're too small in terms of the anticipated revenue is not worth having its own campaign. It's not to say that those people won't come through the door and be your customers, but what we're saying here is we're not going to aim our advertising or marketing towards that segment. The last criteria is that the market segment has to be reachable through some form of media, which is generally not a problem in Australia. Most people are reachable by some kind of media or marketing method. And another sort of way to think about this 4th criteria is that think about if your end customer, who is your end customer? So if it's a child, for example, you might not be able to reach them directly through advertising, but think about who the decision maker is in comparison to the end customer. So your advertising should always speak to the decision maker, and that will be your target market. Now, consumer markets can be segmented or divided by a number of different dimensions. The most common is demographics, so age, income bracket, geographic location. But other segmentation can include psychographics or behavioural information, generational, obviously geographic I've mentioned, but benefits and usage or value to the customer, as well as their personal beliefs or values. So thinking about all those elements, you want to really clearly define who your target market is. You want to have that clear image of them, visualize them even, or be able to describe that person in depth. And keep in mind that if a company tries to appeal to everybody, saying that to everybody is your target market, which I hear a lot of the time with small businesses, you end up appealing to almost nobody because the message is diluted, it's confused, and it's in the wrong place. And that's why your target market is so crucial in terms of strategic marketing on a shoestring budget. Okay, then we've got the marketing mix. So this is the other strategy area that I will expand on. Now, a marketing mix includes controllable factors within your business that have been chosen to satisfy your customers' needs. Those 4 controllable factors are your product, your place, your promotion, and your price. Okay. And now there is also talk of 7 Ps if you include people, as in staff, processes, as in your operations, and your physical environment. The most common areas to incorporate in a marketing strategy are the 4 Ps, but think about those other 3 Ps, your people, process, and physical environment. And if it's relevant for you to develop a strategy around those, then absolutely incorporate that in your marketing strategy. Now, to expand on the 4 products, first of all, look at your product range. What is your product range? What are your products? Does your range complement each other, and does it suit who you've identified as a target audience? Now, you may have different target markets for different audiences. That's okay. That just means that when you're advertising a particular product, everything is focused towards that target audience that's relevant, and then vice versa with another product. Rather than trying to do a generic brand ad in one or the other magazine, you're going to talk directly to that audience that's relevant to the product. With your product range, you may need to look at whether or not you need to make any changes to appeal more to your target market. A key thing when it comes to customer service, but also product development, is that you really have to understand that you cannot expect consumers to ever change their needs and wants to suit your product. So you are always going to have to adapt your product or service to suit their needs and wants. So when you've identified your target market, is there any gaps there? Does your product perfectly suit the needs and wants of your target market? If not, you might need to do some tweaks there to ensure that it does. When we talk about your product range complementing each other, is there any confusion there? So let's say you've got products X, Y, and Z. Does the price differ enough so people can see, and the value differ enough so that people can see the difference between the three? The worst thing you can have in terms of a product range is confusion, where people just don't know what to buy because they can't really tell what the difference between X and Y is, and whether or not they really need to upgrade to Z. So that kind of thing, really having a product range that sits nicely alongside each other is really important. Then you've got your pricing. So thinking about, how does your pricing suit your target market, or does your pricing suit your target market? If you've just identified a new target market, you may need to do some tweaks to your pricing. Also, going back to your competitor analysis, how does your price compare to your competitors? How does it compare to how does your price compare to each other in your product range, like we just said? How do they sit alongside each other? Now, the key thing when it comes to pricing is, does your pricing allow for enough profit? So a lot of businesses that I come in to work with, and we start talking about pricing and profitability and cash flow and that kind of thing, one of the first things I will say is, which of your products is most profitable? And 9 out of 10 people don't actually know which product is most profitable, or which service, for that matter, is most profitable. So pricing is really important here, where you've set your pricing so that you've got good profit margins, so that you're competitive alongside your competitors, and so that it appeals to your target market. So you can't define your pricing just by saying, all right, it costs me this much, I'm going to mark it up 50%. You really have to know that, is that going to work with your customers, or how does that compare to my competitors? So there's so many elements of price. And again, as with everything in a marketing strategy, you have to go back to your target markets. You have to go back and look at your competitors as well. So price is a really key thing here. Now, place or distribution sort of ties into pricing a bit, but thinking about here, where do your buyers look to buy your product or service? Is it online? Do you sell it to customers direct, or do you wholesale your product? If you sell it direct, can you afford to also wholesale it? Has your pricing been set that you can have a wholesale rate to get you further reach? Thinking about what distribution channels you have in terms of placement. If you do wholesale your product, like I said, you have to go back to pricing, but you might have to incorporate this into your product strategy as well, in terms of, what sort of products you have, if you have wholesale and retail products. Then you've got your promotion. So what's your strategy around promoting your product or service? Where will you market it? How are you going to get to your market if you're attracting customers directly, in terms of advertising? Again, going back to your target market, where specifically do they consume media or advertising? What magazines are they picking up? What websites are they on online? What social media are they on? So you need to know what type of methods of advertising are going to appeal specifically to your target market. You have to know your audience really well to be able to determine that. And from there, you have a strategy around your promotion. And your strategy might be, in terms of working on a shoestring budget, it might be online focused, because we know that online focus, you can be extremely targeted. It's very, very trackable. So there's a range of benefits in terms of advertising online, whereas mass media can be more expensive, a little bit more diluted, but you have to understand who your target audience is and your budgeting and that kind of thing at that point to really determine your promotion. Okay, so that was an absolute fly through of the development of a marketing strategy. Lots of time and patience is required to develop a strategy. Like I said, I would spend, 4 to 6 weeks developing a marketing strategy, because it's not something you sit down and you do in one hit. You have to do research and go back and forth and be working on all of these documents concurrently, essentially, so that you can be updating information as you learn something new that might give you something more for another document. So you need to spend the time. You don't have to pay somebody to do a marketing strategy for you. You can absolutely do it yourself. And then once you've developed your strategy, you can be very targeted and spend your funds, particularly if funds are limited, very well with that strategy behind you. The key reasons that you should strategically plan and develop that key marketing strategy is that it composes the big picture. Now, you need to factor in both your internal factors. So don't leave any of those research areas out, or you won't compose the big picture. But it does work, and it does compose this big picture, and it does it by pinpointing that specific target market that you're going to serve, by determining your customer needs and wants through this market research, by analysing your competitive advantages, and then building your strategy around exactly what it is that makes your business differ or stand out from other businesses. And then you create that marketing mix that meets the customer needs and wants, and highlights your competitive advantages. So a key consideration for your strategic planning is that your business or your planning absolutely has to match your resources and your capabilities, and that will then ensure long-term growth and survival. So you have to factor in all components to get that big picture, but you have to be realistic with your resources. Now, I did touch on this earlier, but I truly believe that strategic planning is an integrated activity and that you should involve as many areas of your business as possible. So just keep in mind, if you don't know what's going on, let's say you're responsible for running the business, so you don't necessarily know everything that goes on in the front line, there's something you might miss there. On the flip side, if you're stuck in the back office, there's something on the front line that if you're in the front line, there's something back office that you might be missing. So I would try and get your entire team, or at least a selection of team members, in a room together to really brainstorm and flesh out some of those research areas, to just get those really different perspectives. I personally like to do that on an annual basis. It's a forum to generate ideas, to give feedback, and I think it can be really helpful and make your job a lot easier. So that really is the most important element in marketing on a shoestring budget, having that strategy behind you, knowing exactly who you're talking to, what products they want, where they consume media, and then absolutely no marketing money is going to be wasted. So now we're going to get into looking at some specific low-cost marketing activities that you might be able to implement in your business. Now, some of what we go through, a lot of it is going to be online. Some of it gets a bit technical, and that's okay. So if you may have experience with websites and that kind of thing. If you don't, please stop me and ask questions at any time. But also keep in mind that you may be working with a web developer, and just having this knowledge or this basic info might help you to ask them a few more questions. Before we get into online stuff, just to kind of think about some overarching marketing on a shoestring elements, I think there are some essential low-cost marketing activities. Of course, being online, making sure that your online setup is solid in terms of your website, your SEO and remarketing, which I'm going to talk about all three of those elements, but also getting reviews and referrals online. Make sure that you are getting reviews, make sure that you're listening to reviews, and you've got alerts set up to be notified when someone puts a review on Google, or when they review you on Facebook, or any other method that they can review you on. Also, make sure that you're responding to those reviews. Be part of that conversation and take on board any feedback that you get. Hopefully it's all positive, but sometimes there might be some constructive criticism in there as well. Keep in mind, people can review you through Google, they can do it through Facebook, they can do it through other industry-specific methods. There could be TripAdvisor, it could be Yelp, it could be Booking.com. There's tons of different ways people can review you. So make sure that you're doing a good search and find out where your business is actually being reviewed. Try and take ownership of those listings. Like I said, set up those alerts so that you can be part of that conversation. Now, in terms of personalized marketing, I think personalized marketing is a really key element in marketing effectively. So you can personalize things through email, through social media, but what you need to do is talk to your audience. Talk to them about relevant events, relevant times of year, relevant things, topics of interest. If you obtain an email database through your process, Now, you might take bookings and therefore have to get contact details, but you may have other ways to generate an email database by saying to people, do you want us to keep in touch with you? Send them interesting information, hints and tips, not just products and offers, but you can obviously incorporate offers and deals and that kind of thing, but talk specifically to them about what they want. So really personalize that marketing. Now, new customers are really important because the more new customers you get in the door, the bigger your revenue will be. But and obviously you need to create offers to get them. So I would highly recommend that you have some kind of hook to get new customers in the door. Once you've then got them, they cost very little to keep, subject to amazing customer service and staying in touch with them. So new clients are really, really valuable in terms of getting them in the door. And that's where your marketing expense comes from. It costs something like 8.5 times more to attract a new customer than it does to retain an existing customer. Now, that's a stat based on retail, so depending what industry you're in, it could differ, but it's so important that once you get them in, keep them in this cycle, serve them well, give good follow-up customer service, make sure you communicate to them through personalized marketing on social media and email marketing. And so next time they have a need, you're there or you're being recommended, so they become a brand advocate, but create some kind of hook to get them in the door. Also, nail your value proposition as well. Use your unique selling proposition, your USP, in all advertising. Develop content that really highlights it and storytell through your content so people know that you truly are the best for that reason. So you have to know yourself and be really confident yourself in what your USP is to be able to storytell with it. But really nail it by comparing against your competitors and looking at what your strengths are and really determine where it is that you stand out. In terms of PR is a fantastic way to generate a lot of exposure at little to no cost, but you can do this yourself. So don't think that it's something you have to pay an agency for. You can be your own PR advocate. We do have a specific media and PR webinar, so absolutely keep an eye out for that. But that's all focused around getting free publicity and engaging with the media. And again, using your unique selling proposition or what it is about you as a small business to get that publicity is a really good idea. And it can generate a huge amount of coverage, and that could be offline in newspapers, magazines, it could be online through a range of different ways, but PR is huge for small businesses. Now, the other effective marketing avenue, if you don't have much budget, is to look at sponsoring events. So make sure that whoever you're sponsoring, they offer a good return on your investment. So good coverage, and it could be coverage to their database, it could be signage, it could be magazine coverage, it could be editorial coverage. The key thing here is making sure that whatever it is that they're doing for you from an advertising perspective, that it absolutely talks to the same target audience as you. Otherwise, it's not a very good opportunity. So think about a situation where you've got your business, for example, might target people that are, let's say, over 60, and the local footy club comes to you and says, sponsor our dinner, we'll get an email out to all of our database, and it's a junior footy club, we'll get an email out to the database, we'll put your flyers all over our football carnival, we'll put posters up, we'll put you on our website. That sounds like a great opportunity. However, the target market that's going to be sitting there at that footy club that's receiving information on your business isn't the over 60s market. So it's not your target market, just as an example. So you make sure that whoever you're sponsoring, it directly correlates to your who you would target if you were advertising. Otherwise, it's not a good opportunity. Lastly, I would say not to forget about grassroots marketing. So think about signs, handouts, flags, billboards, what you can do in and around your own venue to perhaps get a bit more attention. And also consider traditional marketing. So traditional marketing is important and there's a place for it. It can be more expensive, but again, be targeted. If your market was at over 60s, is it better off to put an ad in the West Australian or in a seniors magazine? Think about exactly who's consuming the media where you're placing advertising and make sure that you make those decisions based on that. So that's a few ideas for you. We're going to further explore some of the online marketing tactics now and how to best market your business online, because every business, no matter what industry you're in, really should be online. And you can maximize your online presence and get new business and really capitalize on every marketing dollar spent. So online advertising, as I've said, and as I'm sure you know, can be extremely targeted, but the best thing about it is it's very trackable. So it takes the guesswork out of whether or not what you're doing actually did well. And that's why we're going to focus on it now in terms of marketing on a shoestring budget. Now we'll start with your website. Now your website is at the core of your marketing, of your online marketing, I should say, but it is just part of your marketing strategy. Potential customers need to be able to find that website. You also need to be able to actively engage with current and future customers online. So we'll talk more about being found shortly, but first, for your website itself, this is a place where customers can find out about your products. They can make purchases. They might even find your physical address if they don't know your location, they could purely just be using it for that. Think about your website as your 24/7 number one salesperson. So is your website actually doing you justice? Is it selling your product or service as it should? Now, a lot of people either don't have a website or have a basic website that they created just because they were told they had to have a website because their business might be face-to-face. But think about all of those people that don't come to your business because of what they see online. Now, I do this all the time where I'll do research, and it could be on restaurants, it could be places to go, it could be physios, or absolutely anything and everything. It starts with a web search. You might search locations, you might search other key information. When you get to that website, you make a very quick judgment on what that business is like. So think about that. If someone was not to ever speak to you, see your premises, or experience your product or service, if they were purely to judge you on your website, does it do your business justice? So thinking about that, there are some key web design elements that you should consider. First of all, knowing that your website is a very valuable marketing tool, think about the design and what does it look like? Is the design fresh? Does it have an easy navigation? Have you tested that navigation with friends and family and asked them to perhaps try and buy something or try and interact with you, do a task online and watch them do it? Does it have large hero images that really highlight and tell the story of your product? Now, the images, again, have to talk directly to your target market. They have to appeal to your target market. If there's people in them, the people in them should be those that look like your target market. So again, go back to the over 60 business. If your market was over 60s and you decided to just do a photo shoot with your family because you didn't want to pay models or anything like that, and you thought, oh yeah, we'll just take a few photos with the family. So then on your website, you've got a family sort of scenario. So I'm an over 60 person. I'm looking at your website and going, oh, maybe this product isn't for me because all the images on here are of families. So keep that in mind. Your images absolutely have to talk to your target audience. Thinking about your calls to action, whether it's buy now, shop now, are there really strong calls to action so the customer knows exactly what to do once they're on your website? Also, is it fully responsive? So that means, is it essentially mobile friendly, or does it look good no matter what device it's appearing on, whether it's desktop, tablet, or mobile? So thinking about whether it adapts its shape, and that is essentially what responsive means. So that's really important. A lot of this is important for SEO as well as, which is how well your website ranks, as well as the user experience. Now, also ask yourself about the content. Is the content good? Can the customer get enough information about your business? Does the content flow? Now, remember that also helps with how you rank, and we're going to get into SEO shortly, but Google reads content on your website to understand what the website's about. So imagery is so important to sell your product, but content really is king when it comes to SEO, but also to the user. So think about, are you getting lots of people phone you and asking questions? A particular question, maybe it needs to be on your website somewhere in a more prominent position. Now, as I said, everything about your website should speak to and be aimed at your target market, from design to colors to fonts to technology and functionality. It's all about your target market. So go back and think about that target audience. Now, having a great website is one thing, but you also need people to find it. Now, finding it basically through SEO or through online advertising, but SEO has to be the core of what you do organically if you don't want to spend significant money on advertising. So we've used the term SEO a couple of times. You may be aware of what it is, but SEO stands for search engine optimization. So in very simple terms, that's the process of improving your site to increase its visibility for relevant searches. Now, good SEO is a range of a number of different tactics, so hundreds of tactics, and it changes and evolves continually. So what you might have done that's worked in the past may not work anymore because there's been an algorithm change. But basically what happens is web bots crawl your page, the individual pages of your website. They will then put you into a database and rank you according to a number of key factors. When someone searches a particular term, it goes obviously the search engine very quickly goes through that database or the indexing and goes, all right, we'll pull up this website because it's got the most relevant information to that particular search. So a key thing for SEO to be effective is you need to do your keyword research. You need to know what terms people are actually searching in order for your website to come up. Now, I speak to people occasionally and they'll say, my website ranks really well. And I'll say, okay, what does it rank well for? And they don't actually know what key search terms they've aimed for. It's great to rank well for your own business name, and that's what we call branded search traffic. But people already have to know about your business for that to work. What you want is people that don't know about your business. So for people to search terms like Perth restaurant and you come up, if that's what industry you're in. But you need to understand what those search terms are, and you need to know how many people are searching those terms. So let's say I said to you, you need to rank well for Perth restaurants. So you spent all your time and money on SEO to rank well for that term, but we didn't actually look how many people search that term. You need to know that there's a number of people searching that term every month for it to be viable for you. So that's where you can use a Google Keyword Planner tool. You can actually look at how many search results specific terms have each month. You can then also get ideas and recommendations about other search terms that might be relevant. So you might think the best term to aim for is Perth restaurants, but maybe it's restaurants in Perth instead. So tweaking those terms can make a lot of difference. And then you aim your focus towards the terms that have the highest volume. So keyword research is absolutely crucial. Now, you might not be responsible for doing your own SEO. You may have someone that does it, and that's absolutely fine. There are a lot of experts out there that focus on SEO for small businesses, but just make sure you clearly understand what keywords they are aiming for you to rank against or rank well for. So I'll explain some SEO now, because this, in terms of low cost, SEO is low cost. Because once it's done, it's all about ranking. So these are all things that you can do yourself if you have access to the back end of your website. In terms of using an SEO person, that's absolutely fine. As I mentioned, I have great contacts in terms of people that do SEO for businesses. It's just a matter of, for you as a small business owner, understanding what potential factors can impact your SEO. If it's something you do yourself, everything we go through here is able to be done in the back end of your website, depending on what website platform you're on, obviously. Now, the first page, so two things with SEO. There's on-page SEO and there's off-page SEO. So on-page SEO is everything that happens on your website that affects the ranking. Off-page SEO is everything that happens away from your website that potentially links back to your website and also affects your ranking. So on-page SEO is readable URLs. So making sure that your URLs, let's say you've got the About Us page of your website, it's yourwebsite.com.au/about-us. It's not yourwebsite.com.au/page123. It needs to say in the URL what the page is about. Internal links within your website are really important. So linking, if you start to talk on your homepage, you talk about your range of coffee, that links to the coffee page, and then your teas, that links to the tea page. So making sure that there's a lot of internal links within your website that link pages, so it's easy for the consumer. Whatever's going to be easy for the consumer and good for the consumer is going to rank well, because that's Google's end goal. Now, 301 redirects in line with that are really important. And that means if you've changed a URL, you tell Google through a redirection that a URL that used to live in this location is now in this location. That avoids people getting to error pages on your website. There's nothing worse than when you're clicking a link or, you know, moving around the web and you get to an error page. Now, Google doesn't want to send people to error pages, and therefore it's going to rank those pages poorly, which is not what you want. Now, page load times are really important. Large images can impact this and other factors on the page, but make sure you test that regularly and that your load times are quick. Now, again, that comes down to usability. We don't want to click, let's say we searched something, Google results came up, we clicked it, and then we had to sit there waiting forever for that page to load. We're going to go off pretty quickly and go on to the next page, or to the next website, I should say. Now, a few other things that we're going to expand on now are title tags, meta descriptions, alt tags, and headings. So this is becoming a little bit more technical. Again, you don't necessarily have to go into the back end and do this yourself, but you have to understand and ask your web developer or SEO person what your position is on this. So first of all, we've got page title tags. So this is what you see in the red box here. Each of the pages in your website should have its own unique title tag. Now that should include the main keywords for that page because you've done your keyword research. So it's not the headline that's on the actual web page. This is only visible in the back end of your website, but it's what comes up when people search and your search results come up. So for example, on this one, I was Googling ASBAS Perth, and as you can see on my screen, this is what comes up. Now, in the red box is your title tag. It's an optimal length of, say, 60 characters. I think it's about 60. And that's long enough to display a good title without it getting cut off. Don't use stop words like the and is and those kind of things. Just put your primary keywords first. Now, aside from being a really critical factor for Google robots or web bots, these page title tags really influence users because the more appealing, the more likely they are to be clicked. So make sure that yours makes sense, because the ultimate goal is getting people to click through to your site based on what they read here. Now, underneath that is your meta description. So again, this isn't visible on any part of your site except if you check the actual HTML code. So go into that. It's a little description that's found under your title in search results. So it doesn't actually affect your ranking in search engines, but if it's well written, it can encourage people to click through. So it's like a mini ad for your web page, and it's completely free. Now, if you don't specify what these meta descriptions are, then Google will do it for you. The way Google does it is they take a small sample from the text of your pages. Sometimes the sample could be information that's not really relevant, or it could be cut off. So it's really important that you take control of this, and it's individual. Each page is separate. So don't use the same meta description for every page on your website. Now, next we've got alt tags and heading tags. So on the left-hand side, alt tags are used for images. They're HTML tags that you can use to describe what an image is. So search engines can't see an image, so they crawl each page and look for a description. So without a description, they have no idea what it is or if it's relevant. So if Google bots can find the image, then obviously it's going to help with your search engine ranking for that page, but it could also appear in Google Images search. So it's a really good idea to include local keywords or the title of the page in this image description, and that will help with trying to rank well under those terms. Now, on the right-hand side, you see heading tags. Heading tags are important for SEO because they help both the reader of your content, but also Google bots to determine what the content is on your page and how important it is. Now, as a user, you would glance over a page. So a large heading would be where your eyes would be drawn, and then the smaller headings you'd then be drawn to them again, but under specific topics. So search engines use these heading tags as indicators of context and what's on the page and how does it relate to what the user's searching for. So each heading tag carries different weights. So an H1 tag is the most important, and that should be what the main page heading is. Then, so H1 is basically what the entire page is about. Then as you go down, H2, H3, H4, and so on, that should be what that particular section or what that particular paragraph is about as it goes down. So That's pretty straightforward, but it is really important that you've considered it. And again, if you don't have access to this kind of information, make sure you're asking the question about who potentially does. Now, then you've got off-page SEO or off-site SEO, it can be called. Now, this is actions that are taken outside of your own website that impact the rankings within the search engine results pages. So off-page SEO should make up the majority of your SEO strategy because it really helps to build that credibility of your website. Now, you want your website to rank above others that have a similar message. So to achieve that, you really have to build your website's authority. You can do that by, first of all, link building. Now, link building is the major component of off-page SEO or off-site SEO. And that's basically the process of getting external pages to link to a page on your website. So building links can be complicated and it can take time. Not all links are equal. So a link from a more authoritative website will make a greater impact on your search engine results than a link from a newly built or a low quality website. So if you use an analogy, who would you trust more to give you legal advice for your business? 20 strangers or 2 qualified lawyers? So the chances are that you'd believe the 2 qualified lawyers because they're educated and their advice carries more weight. So the same sort of applies to search engines. Google bots will count all the links that come into your website, but they don't consider them equal. They'll give more weight to the more authoritative or the higher quality links and rank them accordingly. So if your site had 100 poor quality links, but your competitor had 15 good quality links, then the chances are your competitor will rank higher than you. So that's really interesting to note. Now, Google has become really good at spotting a scam when it comes to link building. In the past, you used to be able to, pay a fee to someone dodgy and buy, let's say, 1,000 links and have all these links from random sites come back to your website. You absolutely can't do that anymore. So don't even try it. You should have these good quality links that come from a trusted or a reputable site or a site that's related to your type of business. Generally, with link building, a good quality link is hard to come by or it requires some kind of human intervention to implement it. It has to be on a page that's related to the content that it's being linked to. It should add value to the reader. So the reader should be able to be reading something and go, oh, yes, I'll link to this business. And it should be generally likely to be clicked. So think about, in terms of link building, do you have any memberships, any membership organizations that you are a part of that perhaps have a website that links to members, business directories, those kind of things? So have a think about all of those areas that really might have authoritative websites that are relevant to your business and that would link back. Now, there is some non-link related off-site SEO, off-page SEO. So obviously those links from external websites, that's the most commonly practiced off-site SEO, off-page SEO. But anything else that occurs outside of your website and helps to improve your search engine ranking can be thought of as off-page SEO. So social media marketing. What happens in social media absolutely sends signals to search engines. So in terms of your social media, if you're active on channels, if you're getting lots of engagement, if you're engaging with people, so, think about lots of comments and shares and there's conversation going back and forth, there's absolutely signals going to search engines there. Also, you might work with influencers that are talking about your products. There could be brand mentions and that kind of thing. If you're ever working or getting any PR, working with journalists or influencers or anyone that's doing blogging, anything like that, always ask for that link from whatever their article is back to your website. That's really important and that will have huge value for you from an SEO perspective. So that's off-page SEO. Like I said, it's probably the biggest part of your SEO strategy because it is time-consuming and it does require quite a lot of human intervention, but very important. Now, that's SEO and that's ranking organically when people search, but there's also SEM, which is search engine marketing. Now, that's where you can set up advertising and you pay per click. We're not going to get into that today, but I will tell you about another form of Google AdWords, which is remarketing. Now, if remarketing is done correctly, it can be so great for increasing brand awareness and influencing conversions, and it's really low cost. So it's a very simple concept. Basically, a prospect will come to your website through whatever means. Now, they may have seen a flyer, they may have seen your flags on the side of the road, they may have searched and come to your website through an online search. So they could come to your website anyway. When they're on your site, Google tracks them, and then when they leave your site, your ads appear in banners or pop-ups on other sites that they browse. You'll most definitely have been a recipient of remarketing in the past, I would imagine. You may have noticed it, you may have not. Sometimes it can seem a bit overwhelming and a bit, you can see some brands are really aggressive with it and you feel like you're being stalked, whereas others are a lot more subtle. But basically, you as the advertiser, you only pay when someone clicks that link to get back to your site. So it's fantastic for increasing your brand awareness. Like I said, people might see your brand and your business ad 5 times and never click, but then they'll do another search and give you a call or something like that. Or they may see it several times and then recommend you to someone else. It's only once they click, and if they click, you would think that they're quite serious to engage with you again, because they've already been to your site. So you're not paying for impressions, you're paying for clicks. So I think it's a fantastic approach. And if you were to do nothing else from a pay-per-click advertising perspective, I would absolutely incorporate remarketing into your strategy. Now, you can do remarketing through Facebook as well. What I've mentioned here is Google remarketing through the AdWords program, but you can absolutely do it on Facebook as well. So you can put a pixel on your website so that every time someone goes to your website, they're tracked. You can then advertise to them on Facebook, so not even on your website, via the web. So keep that in mind as well. Remarketing is absolute gold. It's very, very low cost, and it should be something that's part of your annual advertising. All right, so a really critical part of marketing effectively and doing that on a limited budget is controlling and measuring your marketing. Essentially, you'll define the method of measurement before you launch any advertising. So you need to know how, if you're going to do something, how are you going to measure it to make sure that you can determine if it's effective. But you absolutely have to evaluate all marketing activities. You have to compare your goals and results and identify any deviations. Now, there could be any range of reasons for deviations, but you have to identify the cause. It could come down to weather, COVID lockdowns. It could be absolutely anything, but you have to identify why there's a deviation. Now, if it's a positive deviation, you should be exploiting those opportunities. But if it's a negative deviation, you should formulate a new plan and a new course of action to correct the problem. Sometimes the problem's with your ad, or it's with your target market, or it's with your message. Sometimes it's with, situations beyond your control. But the key thing is that analysis there. But make sure you stay disciplined and follow your price and your quantity objectives and keep tweaking your marketing. If conditions do change, take note of it. Adapt your marketing plan to fit those new conditions. So if it's, like I said, bad weather, lockdowns, just revise your objectives if you're not meeting your sales targets. Keep in mind, the best marketing plan is one that's reviewed often. And when you've learned lessons from 1 year or 1 month to the next, carry them over so that you can continually learn from them and keep tweaking your marketing. You don't have to get to the end of the year and go, well, that marketing wasn't worthwhile. Do it weekly, do it monthly. Make sure you've got solid reporting in place as well. So that reporting is a key part of what you're doing. So at a minimum, set up monthly reporting to track sales leads, sales specific products, your costs associated with lead acquisition, track your web hits, so your unique users, sessions, goals and conversions, and obviously referring site traffic. And also track your social media stats so that you know what engagement you're getting for each post. And how many posts you're doing as well. So that wraps up the session on strategic marketing. I hope it makes sense to you all, and I hope there's some things that you can take out of it to improve, or at very least better understand your marketing position. I've got a couple of minutes to answer any questions, so please pop them in if you do have any. We have just scratched the surface, so if you do want to know more or talk about any other aspect of your business, you could always book a one-on-one appointment. Now, this program is changing quite significantly at the end of this month, so this is probably the last couple of weeks that you'll be able to book an appointment with some of the advisors, including myself. So take advantage of that opportunity. And thanks again for joining me today. And I hope to chat with you soon. And like I said, shoot through any questions that you might have. Thanks, guys.